Sahana Vavatu, Sahanao Bhunaktu, Sahaviryang Karavavahai, Tejasvina Vadhitamastu, Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So last week we have done a revision of verse 18, 19, and 20, and thereby I will not do the revision again. However, verse 20, we stopped at a wise person, an example of an enlightened being who was Janaka, and Janaka was a ruler of a kingdom. So imagine you're Janaka, and it's a big responsibility to carry on your shoulders and to be surrounded by many responsibilities. And so Janaka is you, someone that's loaded with responsibilities, someone that has work, someone that has a family, someone that has responsibilities of all sorts. You have to take care of your own issues, your own health. You also have to address the concerns of those around you. And so it's not kind of this smooth ride, right? It's a ride, but it's not exactly smooth. And so Janaka was surrounded by his ministers, and his ministers were luckily, they were educated and they were well informed about the Shruti and the Smriti. And so they were advising him that he has not only a responsibility for himself, but his subjects, that means those that are around you, but also he also needs to recognize that it's not useful or beneficial for him to avoid his duties, that he has a certain amount of responsibilities and needs to address them when they come up. So he needs to look at these problems, his whatever's holding him back or her back, and then say, is this a reoccurring issue for me? And if so, then what's the story behind it? And can I make a correction about it? Can I look at the cause and make some fine adjustments? And so Janaka doesn't want to live as someone that's burdened by unresolved issues, because he knows that, as the ministers have told him, he is given possibilities to work out whatever is bugging him. And he can work it out whenever he puts his mind to it, whenever she puts her mind to it. And so like that, he spent a lot of time practicing this knowledge, knowing that it's not really his kingdom, it's not really your family, it's not really your body, it's not really anything is not really yours, end of the day. And so through this remembrance, he was relinquishing this idea that I have to be this ruler and I have to, compete, and I have to, get my, status is number one above all. He was not subject to all of this because he was constantly reminded that everything could be lost tomorrow. You could, lose whatever, and you can also gain things in return. So this made him a lot more humble than perhaps those kings around him. And through this, he was able to make his mind slowly pure and clean and matured up. And eventually, the ministers told him about this non-dual vision. And he captured that. His mind was able to capture that as was spoken, without any discrepancies between what was said and what is to be understood. That means they were aligned. And thereby, once he gained this knowledge, he then was able to continue exactly the same things as he always does, as she always does. Nothing really changed. The only difference, if you want to call it a difference, is that there's no pressure now, because once you understand your nature as the fullness, that which is the whole, then this whole pressure of having to become someone, which is really the biggest pressure for everyone, end of the day, this whole thing, I have to be someone new, someone better, someone out there, someone, I have to shine and present myself and to prove myself. This is a very difficult burden to bear, and it becomes heavy as life progresses forward. Maybe not for someone that's in their 20s, but certainly as you reach 50, 60, 70, some of us even 50 or 40, then we see the burden of having to be someone and having to constantly prove ourselves and constantly seek this validation and be seen and acknowledged by our teachers, even to be seen by your teacher, even that becomes sort of a burden, because you say, you know, I show up in class and I want to be seen, I want to be recognized by my teacher, because you have a certain connection to your teacher. And so this too becomes something that you can look into, because a teacher like you is also a human being. They also have their own life. They also carry their own dispositions, just like you. They also want to be happy, just like you. They also go through hardships, just like you. They also have to take care of their own, family and people around them, just like you. So there's not really this space of kind of pedestalizing anyone, because end of the day, we're all just, here on the same, in the same manifestation, and we all have a part that is assigned to each person. You have a part to play in this grand scheme of things that I don't. I have a part to play that you don't. And when we put them all together, we all end up serving each other, knowingly or unknowingly. And then you say, hey, how's your day? And you say, wonderful. But then I ask you, why is your day wonderful? What made it wonderful? And you say, because of 10,000 people that touched my life in a way that I didn't even know about. That's why my day is wonderful today. And so who are those 10,000 people that I've never seen? Well, I don't know who they are because I've never seen them. So in that same way, so many have contributed to so many. So now Krishna wants to say something about what are your responsibilities once you understand this knowledge fully. And he starts in verse 21. Yad yad acharati shreshtaha tad tad evetaro janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokastad anuvartate.
Whatsoever an important person does, that alone the other people do. Whatever that person sets as proper, the world of people follows that.
So this verse shows how the society is influenced by people like Janaka or Ajnani, someone that is someone that's wise. We often think that our actions are isolated, that what we do doesn't make any difference. But your actions, they always carry a ripple effect. Okay, so whatever you as a person do, it will be received and it will be seen and heard and observed by someone. And so in that sense, everyone, in a sense, is shaping the environment, knowingly or unknowingly. See, we often say, the government needs to do something, but the government is already doing something all the time. The question is, what are those individuals, in the back scenes, citizens, what are they doing? And so Krishna here says that every person in this sense is a leader. And then the question is, what does a leader do? You being a leader, what is it that a leader does? A leader relegates or has the capacity to relegate their own needs for the needs of the whole. That means they don't just deny their own needs, but they also includes the needs of the community, of those around them. That is the defining attribute of a leader. And then Krishna then further expands upon this. He says in the verse, quote, whatsoever an important person does, that alone other people do. Okay. So whether you are, a prince or a judge or an officer or an accountant or someone that's working in a cubicle in a corporate office or a practitioner, even in the class, right? People are observing you. And so whatever an important person does, that becomes a template for those around them. It becomes a template of conduct, of proper etiquette for those around them. It may not become a template on day one, but it becomes a template the more you spend time with those around you. So this means now having this knowledge received, the question is, what now? Well, what now is people are observing you. They're saying, hey, you're the one that studies the Gita, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, you're kind of acting like everyone else. So why should I study the Gita? So now you've just made someone not study the Gita through your own actions. You've denied them the knowledge of the Gita. So that means that Krishna says here, you are thus a Shrestha. You're a role model who is looked up upon by those around you, and a role model sets the trend. Sets the trend. You know, what is a trend today in the younger generation? TikTok, right? Something like that. Who set that trend? How was that trend set? Somehow. Maybe someone shared the post. Hey, what's this? TikTok. Oh, okay, download TikTok. Okay, I'll download TikTok. Hey, look, I've got 2 million views smashing myself into a car. Is that all it took? Yeah, okay. How did you do that? TikTok. Okay, download TikTok. Now I'm gonna jump off and jump off a roof of a house. 500,000 views. Oh, I've got attention. So I've set the trend. I've set the trend of how to get attention, and therefore others follow your trend. Just download this and then do other weird things. For example, so whatever you do, you set the trend. And that's what he reinforces in the next part. He says, whatever that person sets as proper, whether it's proper or not, it doesn't matter. To them, it's proper. Whatever the person sets as proper, the world of people follow that. In other words, whatever a leader, a Shrestha, which is you, whatever he or she sets as a pramana, pramana is a means of conduct, means by which things are attained or done. Whatever you set as a pramana, what happens? That becomes a standard for others to follow. And that standard becomes crystallized through generations. So if you really think about it, the standards of today that we have, like the standard of short skirts where I can see your bum, how was that a standard in 1970s or 1950s? Was that a standard? No. Oh, okay, even before 1940s or 1930s. Was that a standard? No. So how did it become a standard for the dresses to get shorter and shorter and shorter until I can almost see everything? How did that become a standard? It became a standard because those in their generations started to look for new creative ways to get more exposure to, you know, whatever, get more fashionable or more attentive, whatever the reasons are. That became the trend for the woman of today. You know, there was once I saw a picture of those men, you know, when they were wearing hats. This is in the Western world, right? They were wearing hats, and this is like, these are the men of the 1940s, you know, like wearing hats and like gentlemen. And then it was a comparison of 2022, you know, these colorful hair, punk style, gelled up, big, you know, gold chains, and just mixture of everything on the face. It's like, what happened? How did the standard shift? And so whatever the generation sets as a standard becomes a pramana for the next generation. There's an example of this. There was a king in India, I don't know what year. His name was Ashoka. And he was converted into Buddhism. And the reason why is because Ashoka was a king who had many followers. And the fastest way to convert a follower, the fastest way to disseminate a religion is how? You convert the leader, you convert the king, because there are many followers who look up to the king, and therefore whatever the king or leader does, that must be the pramana, how things are done. So Ashoka was converted into Buddhism, and what happened? Buddhism, because of that small act, exploded throughout the Indian region. Why is this the case? Because many people, and the majority, don't have the time to look things for themselves. They simply copy what the leaders do. That is a standard throughout human history. Many don't have time, nor the acumen to even investigate for themselves what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And so what you do is you just look at what those leaders that are getting all the attention and the seeming power, you look at what they do and you say, ah, Thus, that must be the correct way of endeavoring my journey. And thereby, the leader sets this trend, and it also can change what religion or standards people follow. And so this means that every revolution has a cause behind it. Every major revolution has a cause behind it. There's a book written by Charles Darwin called The Origin of Species. Okay, this is basically the survival of the fittest. How many corporations did this book alone have an effect on? Survival of the fittest. That means you have to basically stand on the top, and right at because everyone wants to compete with each other. So this means this is the way to live. So this becomes the new trend, how to live. Mao's Red Book, the Mao's Red Book. This was a book of communism, how to run communism. This became a trend for countries such as, I think, Cuba and maybe even China. Then you have The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins. The selfish gene is reminiscent like the book of Origin of Species. And it also talks about that we as creatures, if you want to call them, as mammals, we live to survive, and that survival comes at whatever cost, more or less. And so this book too made a massive difference in one corporation, which I forgot the name of, in around 1999, which conducted massive fraud. And the leader of that corporation was a follower of this book, the selfish gene. And his perception was that the way to motivate my Wall Street investors is to tell them that whoever makes the most deals, whoever closes the most amount of investors, will your salary will increase to a certain X-fold. So this really worked on that selfish part of the human being. So what happened? They all started to just at all cost incur all sorts of tactics to get them to buy these stocks that were worthless, basically. And so this was later found out to be a massive fraud. So you can see how a trend can set the standard. Okay.
The Enron scandal?
Sorry, Asha?
Was it the Enron scandal?
And Enron, yeah, Enron, that's the one. Good recall. I knew it began with E. Okay. And I think it's around 2000, but I saw a documentary on it. Okay.
Yeah. The reason I know is based on that, after that scandal, there was an act that was established in the United States called the SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley Act. And I work on that software. So,
wow.
So that's the...
Yeah. Yeah, good. So now Krishna then reminds, and he says to Arjuna, whatever you do, because you're a Shrestha, you're a leader, in reference to the entire army of the Pandavas, in your case, of your children and your mom and dad, your brother and sister, and your followers, you are being closely monitored by your fellow men and women. And therefore, consider your actions carefully, because if you were to go to Rishikesh and wore beads, what is every one of them going to do? Go to Rishikesh and wear beads too. They would think, oh, he's a leader and he thinks that fighting is not a good idea. And we are happy with his reasons that there will be destruction of society. That makes sense because they're not going to think for themselves. And so he's wearing beads. He's now becoming spiritual. He's doing no action whatsoever. This is the right course of action. Let's all go with them and fill every cave in Rishikesh with someone's dwelling in there. So it says, consider your actions carefully because you are being closely monitored, whether you see it or not. like a camera that's following you 24/7. How does that feel to have a camera following you? How many things would you change about yourself? Would you be okay being followed 24/7? And what are those times when you say, can you please turn off the camera? And I wonder, what would you do during those times when you turn off the camera? So
I have a camera on me every day. I have
Okay.
CCTV on me every single day from
Yeah.
every angle.
Yeah, it kind of helps. Yeah. Yeah.
Andre, there is a camera that is watching everything, everywhere, every time. We have to be very wary of it.
Yeah.
Ishvara is watching. There is a camera on all the time. It never is switched off.
Yeah, Ishwara's got zoom camera. You can zoom in, zoom out, no angle.
Even into the thought also.
Yes, Ishwara can see inside your thoughts too. Yeah. That's actually a good metaphor for it. We often say that awareness or Brahman is the light. We say it's like the light. But then I say then what's the difference between that Brahman, which we say is like light, and awareness? What's the difference? Well, if they're both, referred to as the light, then what's the difference between awareness light and the physical light? Well, what do you think is the difference? Keep that in mind when I get to the next verse, and then we'll talk about this. Okay. So now in the next verse, Krishna uses himself as an example of a leader. Now you may think, how could you? This is a little bit arrogant, Imagine yourself say, hey, now let me give you a perfect example of a leader. And you say, who is it? And you say, me. Now, Krishna can do that because he is speaking as a wise person, and he's worked on his, on his issues, on his insecurities. And then when you have done that, you can say that, hey, look at my life, because I worked on this for many years and I've gone through falls and, so on. Just look at certain sections of my life, and because my life is working, and you will see that there's something to take away from that. So it's okay. You don't have to sound arrogant when you say that. Okay. Now, next verse 22, Krishna uses himself as a perfect example of someone that is wise and how he or she conducts themselves in this world. What is going through the wise person's mind when they operate in this world of forms? Verse 22, Name parthasti kartavyam, trishu lokeshu kinchana, Nana vaptam avaptavyam, varta eva cha karmani.
Partha, Arjuna, for me, there is nothing to be done. In the three worlds, there is nothing to be gained by me, which is not yet gained. Yet I remain engaged in action.
So if you look at this statement, there's a contradiction. On one hand, for me, there is nothing to be done. And yet, for that one, for whom there is nothing to be done, that one engages fully in action. So what could he be talking about here? Yeah, so this is where we introduce two orders of reality. So when he says, quote, for me, see, what is the word me referring to here? For me, there is nothing to be done. So here the word me is Satyam, right? So we'll call it Satyam or awareness. So it is referring to that which is unborn, which is, what does unborn mean? That means it always was, nothing created it, it always existed. It is all-pervading. It is unchanging. That means it always remains the same. Awareness is never higher or lower. It always remains just awareness. You cannot say, I have reached a higher level of consciousness or a higher level of awareness. Nor can you say that Buddha or Ramana Maharishi or whoever your leaders are, they have a bigger awareness than my awareness. This is an incorrect statement. So it is unchanging. That means it always remains itself as itself. It is actionless. Therefore, why is awareness actionless? Because it is the substance of all things. It is the truth of who you are. You see, that which is already the substance, the material, then you can't quite say that anything has changed, because if this body, for example, moves from here to over there, right, from here to there, then you could say there's a certain change in reference to the movement of the body. But the body is made of the substance of awareness. The space in which this body traveled is made of awareness. And the destination, awareness, is already over there. So while the body has moved, awareness, the substance of all things, the material cause of all things, hasn't undergone any change. It was already over there. It is already over here. And the very space in which objects move is also pervaded or made out of that same material cause. So in that sense, awareness is changeless. It doesn't change. It doesn't move. It is all pervading. Now, if you look at this statement, it doesn't mean that physical inactivity now becomes impossible, because this is where you have to bring a different order of reality, which I will do very soon. But it doesn't mean, when I say awareness, the material is changeless, doesn't move, and it's all pervading, it doesn't mean that that invalidates your need to act. Now, when I say your need, I'm talking about the need of the body and mind.
Is that in Sanskrit they say the ghatakasam and the matakasam? Is that the same thing you're talking about?
Sorry, say again.
The space inside the pot and outside the pot?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
exactly the same. So this is a good metaphor. So again, you got a cup. The space inside the cup is without attributes. That means it's clean. It doesn't have anything attached onto it. But the space outside the cup is also clean. It doesn't have anything stuck onto it. So if this space has nothing stuck onto it, and this space inside has nothing stuck onto it, then by definition, they're both attributeless. Therefore, you cannot quite say that they're different, because if I have, see, what makes differences? What makes a difference? An attribute is stuck. An attribute makes a difference, right? So one has an attribute of blue, and the other inside has an attribute of red. That's what you call differences. But neither of them have blue or red stuck onto them. Because if space had something stuck onto it, then, right, if I kind of move this, if I fill it up with Coca-Cola, and you say now Coca-Cola is stuck, has been stuck onto the space, that means if I now move, right, this cup, then you should have Coca-Cola stuck right here. In that case, if I take another cup, which is clean, and I try to fill, and I put it in the exact same place where this Coca-Cola infested space is, and I now put Fanta, then what's going to happen? Then Fanta would just sort of spill out, because this space has already, is already infested with the Coca-Cola, but it doesn't happen. So in that sense, they're both without attributes. Okay. Now, see, from the standpoint of awareness, no action takes place. From the standpoint of the world, a lot of action takes place. But from the standpoint of the material cause, nothing happens at all. Why? Because, as I said, it is already everywhere. Maybe there's another example that you can give to demonstrate this fact. If something's already everywhere, then that invalidates the whole notion of it being actionful. Can you think of another example? If it's already everywhere, then by definition, it can't really move.
Like gravity?
Help us to think of this.
No, I'm just localizing the the gravity towards only Earth. So if we just limit ourselves to area over Earth at 1 or 2 kilometers, gravity is universal. So you cannot have any place where it is more or less, or you can move gravity or anything that can be free of gravity. So
Okay.
it is universal. Locally, it is universal.
Okay, that's a decent example. So you're not going to find, right, gravity stronger or weaker. Maybe you will based on altitude, but that's limiting the example. But just generally, gravity is always gravity. It remains the same, and it always in its presence, the effects are always the same. But maybe another example is maybe light, right? So if you see on a movie screen and the projector is shining, and it's just illuminating the entire wall. But on one hand, it's also illuminating a person that's walking from here to there. Now, what's really changing, what's really happening is the projector is making that light as though it's moving, but the light is already everywhere because the whole thing is illumined by the light. Okay, so there's something about that projector that's making additional, cutting the little bit of pixels here and then making the frames as though they're moving. But generally, that light is already everywhere. So the light is not really moving; it is already shining everywhere. Okay, so some examples, in fact, now that we speak of examples, is if you take electricity, electricity, it pervades an instrument. And the instrument is made according to its nature to, act, to spin, to warm, to heat, to move. But electricity is just present in the appliance. It's not moving, it's not... you can kind of say now it is moving if you want to get a little bit scientific, but so you have to kind of keep the example a little bit, simpler, so you don't break the example. Lorena?
I'd say quantum particles are everywhere. Particles.
Yeah, okay, quantum particles. So Lorena has nice
Various types.
example. Okay.
Electrons, neutrinos, they're just negative and positive particles are everywhere.
Okay.
Within space.
Yeah, okay, so that's another example. We'll just kind of keep it a little bit simpler because we're not all into physics like Lorena is. And so electricity, pervades many instruments, or let's say 5, and they're all going to act according to their particular nature. So Carol is maybe a toaster, and Nitin can be a fan, and Lorena can be a speaker. Michael can be a cooler or aircon. So all of these instruments make different noises. They look different. They act different. They, you have a different relationship to them. Sometimes I will need a toaster, so I'll go to Carol. Sometimes, I use the toaster. So thank you, Carol, very much. Now I need some cooling, so I'll go to Michael. So I'll get a cooling. So this means that every appliance has a certain function assigned to it and will act and move and sound like and look like according to its unique nature that it's assigned. But all throughout, electricity does not spin. Does electricity spin? No, electricity is not spinning. Electricity is just pervading the appliance. Is the electricity cooling? Is electricity cold? No, it is just pervading the aircon, and thereby the aircon is cooling. Okay. Another example is what we use in Vedanta is a dreamer, a dream perspective. So let's suppose you, I'll call you the being, the one that's inside the bed. You're a being inside the bed. And in you, the being, there is a dream body, which is running, which is speaking, which is teaching, which is listening, which is walking. So there is a dream body, and this dream body finds itself in a dream world with a certain theme, with a certain motion. So there's a lot of motion going on in the dream. And that motion is according to a certain theme of your mind. So if your mind is filled with thoughts of whatever, romance, then the theme of the entire dream will be of romance. So now, while all of this movement is occurring inside your dream, is the being in the bed moving? No. So the being in the bed, does the being in the bed have anything to do with what happens inside the dream world? So if two characters in the dream world, the dream body number 1 and dream body number 2, dream body number 1 stabs dream body number 2, and then dream body number 1 goes to jail. Does that make you, the being in the bed, go to jail? Does that make you, the being in the bed, responsible for what has happened in the dream? Not at all. So this means that by your mere presence, the being in the bed, by its mere presence, everything that is depends on this one being in the bed. Without this being in the bed, the entire show could not exist, nor could it be sustained, nor could it be created. So that being in bed, you can call Ishvara. Not only are you supplying the intelligence for that whole dream to occur and the laws in that dream, you're also supplying by your mere presence. It's not like you're supplying deliberately. You're supplying the consciousness for those dream characters throughout the dream. Now, are you the character, the being in the bed? Are you like punching some buttons and deciding what's happening in the dream? Is the being in the bed deciding? Who's deciding? Who's scripting out what's happening in the dream? Could you say that it's you, the being in the bed? No. Hey?
No, but there is, everybody has, distinct type of being dreams. So it all depends upon your life experience and the vasanas that you have collected over a period of time that majorly shape the type of dreams that you got.
This is exactly true. However, what I'm saying, that is true. So that is all in the mind. But are you actively, the being in the bed,
Voluntarily,
actively
not voluntarily.
punching some buttons, saying, I don't like this murder. I want some more romance. So I'm going to now change and sculpt the dream theme. I'm going to change it. I'm going to change because I don't like it. That means, are you with your own fancies and your own desires actively interfering in the dream and changing the theme? Or the dream is just occurring according to the mind that is projecting it outwards? Which one is it?
The second one.
Yeah, it's the second one. So this means that the being in the bed can't be called you can't attribute him or her, whatever you want to give them, as the one that's deciding what is to happen in the dream. Nor can you attribute any responsibility onto them on what is happening to the dream. What is the purpose of the being? As far as purpose goes, by my mere presence as the being, the entire world of dream characters and the storyline is sustained. I'm not doing anything to that. I'm just being myself. Nor am I even caring when the dream appears or disappears. The dream appears on its own accord. The dream disappears and resolves into that very being according to its own accord, according to its own timing. The being in the bed has nothing to do with the manifestation of the characters or the demanifestation of the characters or the resolution of the characters or what storyline goes on in the characters. As far as purpose goes, just by my mere presence of being myself without having any part to play, by my mere presence, the entire dream world takes place in me, the being in the bed. Am I really now the one who does action? Then what is it that's doing? What is it that's having action as far as action is concerned? What enjoys action? The movements in the dream, the appearances in the dream. Now, where are you, the being in the bed? Where are you in the dream? Suppose I'm one of the characters inside the dream and I want to find the being in the bed. Where will I go to find him inside the dream?
You'd have to know that it's a dream and that the reality of the dream is you, or the being.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So by knowledge of only.
So where will I find the being in the bed?
Only on waking.
Okay, let's forget about the waking because that's a different example. Let's just stay from the standpoint of the dream. Let's suppose there's no such thing as waking. Lorena?
There's no locality because it's the totality of the dream. So the dream itself and all the knowledge inside the dream are just objects and namarupa of everything that is known to that dreamer. But at the time, there's no location. They just know all the objects in it.
Yeah, they just know all the objects are pervaded by that one being. So the question is, where will I, as a dream character, find this being who supplies the consciousness and supplies the intelligence? Where will I find him? I will find him right here in the very questioner that's asking the question is pervaded by that very being that I'm trying to find. So this means there is no place in the dream where I will not find this being. The very being that I'm looking for is right now momentarily, right, manifesting as this one character who is now asking about this one being. There's nothing but this one being. So on one hand, from the standpoint of this one being, this conscious being with infinite intelligence, there's no action. Not only is this being all pervading with knowledge and power, but nothing's happening. And no results of action are being dumped onto that being. Just supplying the material and the consciousness for the dream to take place. From the standpoint of the dream, there is certainly karma, there is cause and effect, there is dream, there is waking, there is storyline, there is discussions, there is God, there is this and that. But at the end of the day, from the standpoint of this one being, there is only one being. Another example is you can take water. So water, see the H2O particles in the water, they always remain H2O particles. They just remain what they are. But now at the standpoint of a different standpoint, the waves, right? The waves are moving. But is the water actually moving? Is the H2O actually moving? Because what is moving the water? You could say the wind. Now the wind you can call, as we will get to the next verse, prakriti, or the power that's right is able to as though mold and shape this atma. So there's this power, this wind moves the water, but the water is not moving. Water is always H2O through and through the entirety of this wave. Now, if you have a tall wave, a very tall wave, and it's proud, and it looks down upon smaller waves, and there's one tiny wave and understands something that the big wave doesn't, and the big wave is really annoyed by this, because the big wave is trying to like prove itself. Hey, who are you, little nobody? I'm big, I'm tall, and you're just a small thing. But the small thing is like, that's really nice. I'm really happy for you. And this big wave really can't figure out what is it that this little wave knows. And so the big wave one day realizes, I want to go over and ask. And then a small tiny wave says, your attention has been on your size and your form all this time. I just want to show you there's one more reality about you that you have been missing. And that reality is the same reality as mine, which is the H2O. The H2O through and through you and me is equally available. It's not like I'm going to find some different substance in you that I'm not going to find in myself. The substance that makes us both is the same. The form is provisionally, temporarily different, owing to the wind, owing to the force that's making this wave tall. Then he says, second line, yet I remain engaged in action. So now, what is this I referring to when Krishna speaks of this? He's referring to his body-mind complex. And thereby, this body-mind complex, your body-mind complex, the one that remains engaged in actions, is governed by laws and orders, physiological laws, psychological laws, biological laws, affected by gravity. I just heard that there are those NASA who are in the International Space Station. After 6 months of spending time in space, they have permanent eye damage, their eyesight damage. And there was a reason for this. I don't remember, but someone read this article.
I think it's neutrinos or gamma radiation that we're normally protected from the radiation in space.
No, there was one more.
Particles.
There was one more, because they said it was blood. The blood flow is not being pulled down, and so the pressure builds up. Lorena, you got something?
Just the gravity and how it affects the eyeball. I think something to do with what you're saying.
Yeah. So the pressure builds up, and so it doesn't release, and so it creates this permanent eye damage. And so they're trying to find ways how to work with this order of no gravity. So you can see that we have to constantly adjust to the order. We have to adjust to the order. The order is already set. The physiological laws is that the blood has to come down to the bottom. Otherwise, pressure builds up and there's eye damage. So the moment we change a few variables, does the order excuse us? Does the order say, hey, it's okay, I'm gonna, let you free on this one? No, it doesn't. Order works perfectly well. That's what we call infallible laws of Ishvara. It doesn't kind of give exceptions. So that means we have to constantly adjust to this order. And this order is governing this body and mind that Krishna says is being engaged in action. So who is engaged in action here? Krishna's body mind, which is negotiating, driving the chariot, moving from A to B, speaking, teaching, listening, and so on. Okay. So if you take an example again of a dream character, that dream character is, as Krishna says, remains engaged in action. Therefore, it appears to act, and we call this reality called mithya. Why is it mithya? Because it's dependent upon this being. Without this being, there is no dream, there is no movement, there is no character, there is no thinking, nor inquiring. There cannot be anything without this being. This being and its power creates three kinds of bodies. And one of those bodies you're having right now, the waker body, the Vishwa. And in this waker body, you get convinced this is me. This one being, as though gets convinced this is me, the waker. And then it also manifests the Taijasa, the dreamer body. And then you say, okay, this is me. I am the dreamer body. And then it manifests the prajna, the sleeper body. And then you say, this is me, nobody, blankness. So these three bodies get manifested for everyone. Everyone has been assigned three bodies. And every time you look at yourself in this waking state, you say, this is who I am. And this is, who I act. And therefore, I have to now go and act in this world. So three bodies get built for you. You can call them three dream bodies. And it makes you the one being as though you're now carrying these three bodies. And you go, wow, this is amazing. I've, just like one of these bodies I take to be real. But when you're in the dream, are you worried about all of the makeup and all of your knowledge and how you need to sharpen up your skills and become smarter and how you're aging? Is that present in the dream? Are you worried about your waking body in the dream? How the waking body is getting older and how it's got to go through all of these graduations and get a certificate and so on? No. What are you now worried about in the dream? You're worried about whatever the dream's bringing you. And then, again, you get this nice body of total disillusion. And now you just relax for a moment and you say, I'm free of any kind of activity. And then again, you manifested these three bodies. So these three bodies are acting. And for the knower of the self, the knower of this being, this conscious being, what happens? Once they know that these three bodies are a manifestation of this intelligence, what happens? you remain doing exactly what you are to do until your job is finished. We call this prarabdha karma. You see, why does a jnani not commit suicide? Because now that a jnani knows that my nature is free of this body, it's just a dream body, whatever body it is, whether it's a waker body, it's a dream body. Whether it's a dream body, it's still a dream body. Whether it's a sleeper body, it's still a dream body. So I'm carrying these three dream bodies, and which body is going to die? The waker body is going to die. That body is going to die. So all these three bodies, no matter how you look at them, they're just temporary projections. Now, why does the jnani not kill them, destroy the body? What is it that keeps the body running? What is it that makes the jnani's body, knowing that I have nothing to do with this body anymore, what makes them live one more day? That's what we call prarabdha karma. So it shows you something very interesting, doesn't it? Even when you know your nature as that which is the cause of the entire dream world, who is the boss, end of the day? As long as there's a manifestation, who's the boss? Ishvara is. Ishvara is the boss. As long as there's manifestation, whether you are wise or not, Ishvara is the boss. Because if you, awareness, how can you awareness be the boss? Because you awareness are the actionless one. You're the being, the conscious being, who has no action, who has no capacity to choose, who has no ability to decide what's happening in the dream or when the dream body is going to die. The being in the bed doesn't decide when the character is going to die or who's going to die. What decides? This is what we call the intelligence. So even when you know your nature as the cause of the universe, as that very being, you still don't decide what happens to your body. It shows you that there is a power higher than you. So this means while we're alive, we have to bring certain respect to Ishvara, to this intelligence, because you still depend upon it, still need its air, and you still don't call the final shots. If you did, then go ahead. Say, you know what? Now that I am in charge, I'm the boss, I'm going to stop aging. Is that going to happen? No. I'm going to make my mind very, smart. I'm going to make it, extra intelligent. Is it going to happen? No. That means as long as there is manifestation, whether you are enlightened or not, Ishvara still calls the shots because there are still Ishvara's laws operable in which this body is a participant of, by which this body is governed and sustained by, and that Ishvara still is acknowledged until your last breath. That's why in Advaita Vedanta, we don't discard Ishvara. Because if a person really wants to do that, then I challenge them and I say, okay, so if you are in charge, go ahead, mister, stop your aging. Go ahead, have a lovely life. Go and commit suicide. Go ahead, please do that. They're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. They will find some reason to live one more day, even when they know that these three bodies are just temporary manifestations of intelligence. They will still go a long way to live a healthy, decently happy life. What does this show you? As long as I'm alive, as a human, in a human body, there is Ishvara, the intelligence. That cannot be overridden nor denied because I entirely depend upon it as long as I am alive. That's why devotion doesn't stop, karma yoga doesn't stop, contribution doesn't stop. Yeah.
In the context of all that you have stated for Ishvara, finally, you will put Ishvara in a Satya box or in a Mithya box?
Yeah, so strictly speaking, Ishvara is also the intelligence because intelligence see, anything that undergoes a change is mithya. So awareness is the only principle that doesn't undergo change whatsoever. However, intelligence itself goes into a state of unmanifest and manifest. So that is a change. So that makes it already mithya. But it doesn't make it apart from awareness. This is crucial to understand. The ornament is never apart from the gold. So don't now say that, okay, just because Ishvara is mithya, it means it's a different thing to discard. You can't discard anything in the vision of non-duality because they're never apart. It's just a different way to see an aspect of the whole. On one hand, you can look at the aspect as the whole, as the omniscient one, as the all-pervading one, as the omnipotent one. On the other aspect, you can say it is that which is existent and aware and infinite in its vastness. And what kind of infinity of vastness is it? It is that which is omniscient, all knowledge, and omnipotent, all power. So don't just think it is just vast. Like, how do I relate to this vastness? So what's vast? It's abstract. So you say, what vastness is it? What do you mean vast? Vast in terms of what? Vast in terms of infinite knowledge, infinite power. So even though we say Ishvara, which is infinite knowledge and infinite power, mithya, it is not different from your very nature. That's why we say when the wise person drops their body, not only are you Brahman, you're also Ishvara.
So may I make one doubt of oblique one raise
Sure.
a doubt.
Go ahead.
So it's an upadhi, right? Ishvara is an upadhi, like Jeev is an upadhi of Brahm. Ishvara is an upadhi wherein Ishvara is all powerful. Like, for example, if I want to put across one example, I would say the ocean is Ishvara, wave is Jeev, and water is Brahm.
Yeah.
That way, all of them are the same, but the totality of everything is Ishvara, which has waves coming up and going down. But still, the commonality all along is H2O.
Yeah. So see, all these terms, Gautam, we use as long as there's manifestation. That's why we have to introduce Jiva and Ishvara also. But ultimately, as you say, both the wave, which is a small upadhi, and the ocean, which is the total upadhi, they are just upadhis. They're just appearances of the one water. So whether it is a wave or whether it is an ocean, no matter what you speak of, it is going to be water ultimately. So this means that while you are a wave and you understand your nature as the water, you can understand that, hey, my truth and Ishvara's truth is one, which is water. However, there is a difference. The difference is I can't claim simultaneously that I am all knowledge and all power, because a wave is only a little bit. Ishvara is the total. So in that sense, I can still appreciate devotion-wise. I appreciate devotion-wise Ishvara as all knowledge, all power, which is really my nature. But while I'm obtaining as a seemingly small wave, right, a seemingly small being, I can appreciate I have limited knowledge, I have limited power. And in that sense, devotion can continue to Ishvara, but it's not like I'm looking at Ishvara or the ocean as a different being separate from myself. I'm just appreciating Ishvara as my very being right now.
So long as there is Srishti, or so long as there is a manifestation, the Jeev has to remain part of the overall control of the bigger Upadhi, which is Ishvara. There is no running away from the fact, and therefore the wave has to remain devoted to the ocean. Whether it has realized it is H2O or not, the devotion must continue.
Devotion it's not a must continue. The expression of understanding that the ocean is not away from the wave and the wave is not away from the ocean and the water is not away from the ocean or the wave, the natural expression of that is a certain reverentiality. So it's not like Krishna is telling you instruction, you must be a devotional being. Rather, by understanding that I am in this one reality, obtaining as many, naturally, I will understand that I have no choice but to, right, play by the rules of the game, because I don't set those rules of the game. And those rules of the game are infallible laws which are working since beginningless time. And this body is a manifestation of within that order, a manifestation, one being doing its part. And this being has always been doing its part. Maybe I'll give you a little example. I thought of it today. Did you ever see those nature shows where a duck maybe is stuck in a well and it cannot come out, or a puppy, and then a big bear comes out and it just offers to help? It just extends its hand out. And you say, this is amazing, It's just a bear is going and it just takes its hand out, and the little duck grabs onto its hand and it just walks off. Now, suppose you go up to the bear and you say, Mr. Bear, what motivated you to do that? What's the bear going to say? Mr. Bear, what got into you to pull off such a stunt? And then the bear says, Mr. Youngling, sit down. Let me give you a little bit of a discourse. Number one, your statement, what got into me, is erroneous. Because what got into me implies that there was there was a being who suddenly decided for the first time ever that this is what's going to happen. That's your thinking. I don't think like that, because I've been imbued with this beginningless order of intelligence, which makes my body respond when I see a creature that is in pain. It just happens on its own. There was no I who took ownership of that. It was just a response mechanism. And it says, okay, creature suffers, therefore the intelligence uses the instruments, reaches over and helps out. Nothing got into me. It was there all along since beginningless time. So you can't quite say what got into me. Now, it's the same thing for you and I. Only when a human being claims this ownership of the being, of the person, of this dream character, says, something got into me, therefore I am a doer. Nothing got into you. It's just a program, a software that's been going on since beginningless time, like the bear. So knowing this, that's called the wave, governed by the ocean's laws. Who am I? The actionless one, the one in whose presence the wave and the ocean are taking place, or by whom the wave and the ocean are taking place. We call it the Sakshi Chaitanya, the witness of this body, which is responding like the bear to different situations and helping out and doing its part in this world. So in that sense, we say, Krishna says, going back, for me, there is nothing to be done. Because from the standpoint of awareness, I don't do anything. Just by my mere presence, all this happens. What is all this? Yet I remain engaged in action. Yet my dream body, called Krishna, yet my dream body remains engaged in action. And that dream body is a manifestation of Ishvara's laws and orders, governed by Ishvara's laws and orders. For how long? Like the bear, for as long as time never began. You can't say thus, what got into me. Therefore, these two are playing together constantly. On one hand, there is nothing to be done. I remain as the actionless awareness in whom the entire show of the dream is occurring, including your body, mind right now. And at the same time, I acknowledge this body, mind, and I say, I remain engaged in action. Now, notice how Krishna doesn't say here, yet body, mind remains engaged in action. He doesn't speak third person. You can if you want to, but he's using ordinary language. And then he continues and he says, in the three worlds, there is nothing to be gained by me, which is not yet gained. Now, whenever it says the three worlds, you can think of it as the past, present, or future, heaven, earth, and any other reality in between. So what he really means by this is, he says to Arjuna, he says, I come as the being with all knowledge and all power. For me, there is nothing to accomplish. I'm already the whole thing. So what is there for me to do? Nothing there is to be gained or to lose. How can I lose anything if that which is lost is me? That which is gained is also me. So how can I accomplish anything? Now, he doesn't say this directly to Arjuna right now, because only in chapter 4, verse 7, he's going to say to Arjuna, I am the avatara of Ishvara. I've come here for a specific purpose. But if he were to say this, this is what he would be saying. So thus he says to Arjuna, I'm not here to fulfill myself, because I'm already the whole thing. I'm already that conscious, awareful, all-pervasive being that's already accomplished. I, awareness, am not here to accomplish anything. Now you say, well, geez, this seems like Krishna is, this wise person is the laziest person of all. But that's not what Krishna is saying. Because you look at the story of the Mahabharata, how many things was Krishna active in? Was he a lazy person? Was he a lazy jnani? He was not showing any signs of laziness. He was, for example, the envoy for Pandavas for their last attempt to negotiate the Indraprastha back. He went to Hastinapur to do that. That's a very active job. He was intelligently navigating for 18 days Arjuna's chariot. Is that a lazy job? It's not a lazy job at all. And what else does this tell you? Is any job a lowy job for the Lord? A low job for the Lord? Contrary to what we think, oh, I'm entitled, I don't deserve this. I don't want to clean this. I don't want to do this. I'm much higher. Look at this. Krishna took the lowest job possible. That's not how he thinks, because he's the whole thing. For him, there is no low job or high job. Only we think, oh, you're low in society. That's our thing. That's not Krishna's thing.
Andre, when you talk of two realities, the first one is when he says that I've got nothing to do in this world, he's talking of all consciousness, right? And the second one, when he says that still I, keep on doing, he's talking of his manifestation as Ishvara. Is that correct to say?
You can say it both ways. I know where you're at right now, Gautam. You can say it both ways. So when he says there is nothing for me to be done, he's talking as Ishvara. Because Ishvara is, as I said, the one being is both intelligence, but also consciousness, awareness. Intelligence is not doing the dream characters, is not interfering in the dream characters. Just by the presence of intelligence, it supplies itself, and in its presence, laws get manifest and forms get manifest. Forms are interacting within those laws. So the forms and the laws are definitely, right, doing something. They're moving. But intelligence and awareness, they're not doing anything. That's one way you can look at it. The second way you can look at it is you can say, yes, for me, there is nothing to be done. So it's talking about ultimately awareness. Yet I remain engaged in action. So that I refers to Ishvara. Yet Ishvara, by the presence of Ishvara, action happens.
Okay.
Now,
You can put
now see what I'm
put Ishvara both ways.
Yeah. See what I'm doing? I'm not limiting you to one way, because otherwise we become very rigid and it creates this duality in the mind. Like, oh, Ishvara is always mithya and it's, and awareness is always satyam. I want you to help understand ultimately Ajativada. Ajativada is ultimately there is only satyam here.
When say Sarvam Khalvidam Brahm, it is Ajativad only.
Yeah, Ajativada, yeah. But Ajativada is going to come later, chapter 13, chapter 7, and so on. So we don't have to worry about it now.
I'm just referring to something that Galton was talking about before. And I think he was trying to understand, I think he mentioned the apati, that there's the apati of the jiva, there's the apati of the jagat, and well, you might not have said that, but Ishwara. I mean, would it be correct to say that the wise one doesn't see an apati? There is no apati to the wise one.
Let's
Because
just
they understand it to be all one. That there is, that they understand who they are in reality. There is a jiva, but that's not really an apati for them anymore.
Yeah, so upadi is a word to help you provisionally explain if there's only one, why do I see differences? And so we say because there is a certain power that awareness enjoys, and that power creates what we call an upadi. And upadi is, right, it gives it an appearance that this one awareness is manifesting as, for example, whatever, like a wood, right, a table. And then we say that table is, an upadi, but so is the whole, right? The ocean is also an upadi. So not only is the wave an upadi, and so is the ocean upadi, but then you say, okay, so there is an upadi difference. So that's what we call mithya, okay? Ishwara and jiva, there's an upadi difference, and I can acknowledge that. That means I don't deny it, and that means I participate and honor the upadi, but where is my cognitive understanding seeing through? It sees through both the wave and it sees through both the ocean. And thereby it sees that they're both dependent upon this water. And so, yes, you could say on one hand, there is upadi, but that upadi is not, doesn't have reality of its own. It is just an appearance, a provisional appearance by the possibility of this power, just like in the dream. So your whole dream is an upadi because of your intelligence, of the mind's power to project. He says, in all three worlds, there's nothing to be gained here. So again, I want to show you that how many things Krishna was constantly participating in. He also helped Bhima to neutralize Duryodhana by showing him his vulnerable thigh. That was another participation. He also helped Yudhishthir to host war, deal with politics. Again, he was active. He taught the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. He was active. Can you find one moment where Krishna, the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-pervading one, just sat back and did nothing and advised inaction? Not one. Even Vyasa, see, Vyasa was also a wise Jnani in the Mahabharata. He too, do you think he just sits down and does nothing? Their life is very active. They get constantly approached by practitioners asking for questions. So he's always offering his wisdom. And Vidur also, he was also the third Jnani in Mahabharata. He also was very active to Dhritarashtra, I think his right-hand man or something. So, right, all of them show you a certain engagement in action. And through that engagement in action, you understand the reality, my truth is that which is actionless and unborn.
When we talk about action, would it be fair to say that sometimes refraining from doing something is also a kind of action?
Yeah, good. So we're not talking about inaction, number one. We're just talking about refinement of action. And that refinement may involve refraining from certain things that will produce consequences that I just don't want to deal with in the future, right? So, yes, refraining from, but I call it just refinement and polishing angularities, because we become very sharp, these little angles, and we have to kind of carve them out a little bit.
Yes, and if possibly somebody was pressing you to do something and you thought, well, I shouldn't really interfere, that could be a valid form of action through deciding not to interfere.
Yeah, so see, as long as one thinks about the pros and cons, obviously you have to weigh your options because the situation is very difficult and different. And what, is this aligned with my core values? Is this going to hurt me? And is this going to damage the relationship? Or where is this going to lead to? So many factors have to be addressed you have to know, like, what is it that I'm looking for in a situation? And is it just crossing my boundaries? And am I willing to deal with the consequences if I allow them to have their way? So action is a constant refinement based on the response that's called for. It's never a one-sided thing, like always default to doing something. In a couple of sessions, I said, whenever you're confronted with a situation, there's three options. One, you do something which you've done before. And usually this is what we resort to because it's comfortable and it's mechanical. We call this in the book called Thinking Fast and Slow, we call this System 1. It's a system that's very quick and impulsive and mechanical. It's easy to do. The second option is doing something different. This is system number 2. And this requires reassessment of the situation and saying, okay, this is a new called for circumstance that needs a new response. And what is the best option in this case, as opposed to the last time? So I have to now think. This is not easy. So it requires some deliberation. And the third is we say, I need not do anything. I can just not reply, which is also a reply in itself, but I have to assess which of these three are the best possible options. And you won't know which one is until you get a response. You won't truly know until they respond back to you and say, well, this is not working. And so you have to now make another response. So this is what Krishna is telling Arjuna constantly. You can't ever quite tell or be certain what is an absolutely best situation because there is no best. When you're working in a world of mithya, there's always more information to be revealed. There's always another angle to it, another perspective to it. And so many variables can change how, how you feel and how receptive you are to their request and where they're at in that moment when they're making that request. And sometimes even that's why we have negotiation. We say, don't deliver bad news at the bad time. Deliver it at a good time. So now I have affected the variables just by waiting a little bit. I've changed already the variable, how the other person is responding. So there's so many things that can go to creating an ideal outcome. But the point is, as we will soon see, you can never create an ideal outcome. Never. This is our thing. We constantly strive to deal, to produce ideal outcomes. It doesn't exist. All that exists is I put the best that I can do in the moment. I get a response, and then I say, what now? What's next? Like that. So this whole utopian dream of having the best response, best possible situation working out, this is where karma yoga will show us that I can do the best I can, but as far as results go, too many variables are involved in producing an outcome. And because I'm not the governor of those variables and people that are going to be intercepting the final outcome, I can't. There's too many of them. I have to relinquish this idea that X has to happen, that certain something has to happen. This idea has to go. For example, yeah, go on.
And I was just thinking there's a whole school of moral philosophy, consequentialism, which looks, and really it's very, very misguided.
So as far as consequentialism goes, we just call it, as you would know, dharma, right? So there's a certain universal ethical foundation upon which I build my decisions. And the moment those decisions or my decisions are only considering my well-being and ignoring the well-being of the other side, that's when I've stepped into a consequential, which we call papam, a consequence which is not in my favor. When I align and I think about the impact of both me and the other person, and I'm coming from the right intention, then even if the other person doesn't respond well to that, at least you will retain what we call samatvam, equanimity of the mind. I think we can all kind of, have an example in our life where you had good intentions. You already assessed the situation to be the best possible outcome for both you and the other. But when you deliver it, number one, it's not well received. And even if it's well received, it may not give you the kind of response that you were hoping for. This is the fact of life. It's not some kind of imagination. This is all throughout the Gita, stated on and on and on, that this need of consequences being in a certain way, in a certain kind of shape or form. This is, this, as far as consequences are concerned, they are learning opportunities. They're indicators what has to happen now. And this is what we call prasada buddhi, having a mind that looks at every result, every outcome, every response that comes to us as a certain indicator of refinement of my response. What went well? What can change? What could have I done different? What didn't I do? And could have it gone a better way? Every single time something or someone responds to you in the family, at work, in business, it's an opportunity to say, what did I do well? What could have I done better? In chapter 16, we call this sattva samshuddhi. Sattva samshuddhi. Now, in other words, knowing at the end of the day, what do I want? I want a free, disturbed free mind. That's what we all want, a disturbed free mind. Relatively tranquil, disturbed free mind. How do you gain this? Is it possible overnight? It's not possible at all. But it's possible, little by little. How? Sattva samshuddhi. How so? By assessing what has happened. What has happened? Okay. What has led to what? Okay, so I've done this and this has occurred. Could have I done better? What went well? And what will I do different next time? How will I do it different next time? So every time you have a chance to assimilate this knowledge deeper and deeper and deeper. Okay, so in the light of the vision of the Gita, how would Krishna have done this? Well, maybe he would have done damaha, a little breath before responding. Just one breath, just to bring in that thinker. 1 second is all it takes. Okay, that's it. That's all I need to do for today. One damaha. That I didn't do last time. And so what happened? I raised my voice. And what happened then? I regretted it. And then I thought, okay, so I'm studying the Gita and I raised my voice no different than an ordinary person. Okay, that's fine. What will I do next time? When somebody just ambushes me from around the corner. Ambushes me. Okay, so next time, one breath. And then I will say, what's the matter? That's the first thing I will say. What's the matter? What's wrong? And then they ambush you. And then again, you blow at them. Oh, I missed it. Okay. But at least I've done one breath. But I still raise my voice. It's okay. Next time, I will do one breath and I will do, a question. So little by little like this, you bring yourself back, the instrument, you refine the instrument to act slightly more mature and more deliberate. As I was saying last week, if you really want to get tested, then just be in the world. This is a great way to be tested. In fact, I really honor those who are in the world, who are confronted with challenges, because every challenge is your well-packaged Christmas present or Diwali present, saying, hey, here it is. You want to learn? You say, yes, I do want to learn. Well, here it is. Here's your learning. What kind of learning is it? It's a slap in the face. How will you respond? And you go, geez, I didn't know that learnings take place like that. Well, sorry to break it to you, but nothing is as it seems. You thought that learning is supposed to be gentle and kind. You don't learn when it's so gentle and kind. You just say thank you and you walk your way. But when you really learn is when you get a slap in the face. Depends on which side, right? And then you respond in a way that really shows you what's going on in here and what truly needs work right now. That's when you really get that motivation. Okay, I did not respond satisfactorily. What now? All right, so let me go back to verse whatever and look at one of these attributes, and I will definitely bring them into my responses next time. That's how you start to change. That's called transformation. Without that, without this follow-up, what's the point of listening? It's just listening and goes out. So, in what ways could you find, let's stop, an opportunity, and how could you look at life to be a reminder of where it needs changes of your responses? In what way would you have to look at life to see that life was not there to give you a hard time or to reward or punish you? It was just there to show you what now? What now? This has happened. What now? What's next? And so Krishna will talk about this in the next week by stating that a spiritual person is not a lazy person, but constantly looks at one's behaviors, one's responses, and finds opportunities how to manage the mind. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.